Walking Dead, Dead City. This is the first Walking Dead spinoff that I hope actually delivers and isn't a big disappointment to me. A lot of the other Walking Dead spinoffs outside of the main show have been very, very lackluster as I've watched them over the years. I've been a Walking Dead fan for a little while now, and I've been, I haven't really covered it on this channel. Ever since the main show ended, this is the first series that I think is worth covering after the main show has now ended. And Dead City is the first one covering the characters we actually know and love from, the actual main show, The Walking Dead. So, The Walking Dead, Dead City. This one follows Maggie and Negan. Very, very complicated relationship there between those two characters on the main show throughout, basically, since Negan came into the show, of the main show. It has been a complicated relationship, so it's kind of interesting that they're pairing those two characters together in this show now. So, you got all these other spin-offs that have happened for The Walking Dead, where you got like Fear of the Walking Dead and The World Beyond stuff and all that. It's kind of focusing on new characters, it's kind of been pretty bad writing and stuff like that in these different shows. This is completely new, and I think this new showrunner is everything really, and it's focusing on characters that we know and love. And I really liked this first episode. It's got a very different vibe compared to all the, the forest settings that we get in the Walking Dead stuff where they're just running around in the woods all the time. This one, we're in Manhattan, where we're in the city. We're not running around a bunch of trees and stuff with walkers hidden in the trees. This is a very different setting, and I think there is a lot of potential here in this show. So we kick it off with Maggie basically already on the hunt, which was something in the trailer where her son Herschel has been taken. He has been taken hostage by someone that Negan knows, and that's how Negan gets thrown into this. But we started off with her basically just like looking at the city and just New York in general, and she's just hunting down the people that took Herschel. And we get this whole scene with her just kind of looking, and then she kind of has to take cover as walkers, and she basically bashes in the head of a walker, and it kind of starts out all bloody and gory, just as The Walking Dead always is. And then we cut to some really incredible credits. Now, The Walking Dead's intros I really love both of they have like two versions of the intro for the main series. They kind of switch it up at like season 9. I absolutely love the style of this intro for this show in particular. It's got that same Walking Dead style of the actual main show, and then they added it to this one. You got Lauren Cohan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the two main stars, and it's just got this whole apocalyptic Walking Dead vibe again, but it's different because it's within New York, it's in Manhattan, and it's just a different vibe, but it's the same vibe. And I'm really liking that, because this, so far at least, with this first episode, it feels like the first spin-off of The Walking Dead that matters. You've had things like Fear the Walking Dead that, new characters, but it felt like a very interesting story, but it really, really changed and fell off, and right now it's really messy. But this one, we're following characters we've known and loved in this show for a while, and I think there is a lot of potential here, because you can still now build these new characters around two stars from The Walking Dead. So we kick it off with Maggie. She's already on the hunt, so she enters this bar in somewhere around, it's like New Babylon or something like that, and it's just like this little town that's basically kind of been there, I guess, in the apocalypse. I guess it's just kind of like this whole other area and group of people that have kind of built up their own little society in a way, just like we see in The Walking Dead a lot. There's always like these groups of people out there who split off and kind of create their own communities. And that's what's happened in this one again. So I believe Maggie's actually looking for Negan right now, and that's why she enters the bar. She enters the bar, pretends to, kind of be drunk and go to the bathroom, and then she kind of sneaks around a little bit. She gets caught, though, and then the people in the bar, they, attack her, and she kind of gets away, and then Negan is also in the bar, because she's obviously looking for Negan, because she wants Negan's help to find her son. So Negan, runs away with this kid that he's with, and she chases him down in a car. She gets away from the people in the bar. She fights them. She's got this cool little maneuver with her boot, and like a little knife pops out and stuff. Basic whatever. But this is how we introduce Negan into the show. So we bring Negan in. We kind of cut out of the scene of him or her chasing Negan and this kid down, and she chases him down, and then they cut to the scene where they're just kind of chilling and sitting, and Negan's looking at this wanted poster of him that I think Maggie probably gave him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a wanted man." It seems like Negan has been out there and just kind of been doing his own thing in a way. Maggie brings up his wife Annie and his kid that we basically got introduced to in the final season of The Walking Dead. They're not really significant characters, at least as of yet, even from the main show. It's just like a side story for Negan that they made in that final season, but we don't really know where they are. But right now he's running around with this other kid that he ran into and kind of picked up along the way on his journeys on whatever he's really doing right now. It seems like he's kind of making trouble, I guess, in a way, running around wherever in the area. And that's kind of how we pick up with Negan. We kind of get like a little catch up here with Maggie and Negan where, obviously she mentions Annie and his kid. And then they also bring up the hilltop from, the main show, The Walking Dead. It's obviously where Maggie was trying to rebuild. And she does mention that ultimately they could not rebuild. They mentioned a little later, they could not rebuild the hilltop. It was burned down from the Whisperers. And they ended up relocating, and they're in a new area now. All the same people and everything like that, but the hilltop is actually in a different location now. And they bring up the idea that once again Negan maybe wants to, if I help you out, maybe you'll take me in and take in this kid that I'm with. I think her name was Ginny or something, this kid that he's with. And he kind of brings up this proposal like, okay, I'll help you, and maybe you'll let me stay and stay safe and live there. So the kid's name is Ginny, and he kind of mentions her story just a little bit while he was like at a farm or something like that. And she saw her father die, and ever since then she doesn't speak. So it's like a new character that I think we'll see a little bit more of. I think going into the season they gave like a little teaser at the end of the episode for the rest of the season. I think we'll see a little bit more of her. She hasn't spoken yet. Obviously that's part of the character. I think it could be interesting. It's something again with Negan, and they're trying to make us relate to him with and caring for children. And I don't know if that's ever going to totally work because of just how vicious and brutal that character has been in the past. The Walking Dead tried to do that quite a bit. I don't know if it totally stuck with me, but I do love Negan's redemption from the main show. I do really love how it's gone. But there is some things that are kind of weird still. And, the whole thing of how he suddenly loves kids, and he cares for children so much. But then again, we have that part in season 7 of Walking Dead where he's going to kill Carl. Anyways, the whole Negan, I can get into a lot of stuff with the character of Negan. Obviously, we know this character very well from The Walking Dead. And we've kind of stuck him with a new character again. So we'll probably see more of her. She kind of gets sent off. I think they bring her to the hilltop, the new hilltop area, and they kind of leave her be while Negan and Maggie go into Manhattan to find Herschel, basically. And they're going to try and find Herschel from this guy named Croat, or whatever his name is. And we got this from the trailers. Croat is this guy that was, I would assume, just a savior. He was a savior that was with Negan in the past, and he knows Negan, so Negan knows this guy, which is, I think, very interesting that this random new villain, that these Walking Dead shows like to throw in a lot of different random new villains, and I'm glad that this time they're kind of making a big link and connection with like Negan. He actually has a history and past with Negan, and we know the Saviors were made up of a lot of different people, and they were existing even before he showed up in the main show. So there's a history there that can still kind of link up with Negan, and it makes sense. So if this is like a right-hand man with him, or one of them, and they mentioned that he split off from this guy. He kind of like got, kicked this guy out or whatever because he was kind of crazy. So there's history between Negan and this new villain, Croat. I'm just going to say that for now. So that's kind of the setup we have. That's why Negan is going to end up helping Maggie. That's why Maggie needed him, because she thinks Negan can bring her there and just kind of basically convince this guy to give Herschel back. And that's kind of the situation we get set up between these two. Negan knows the villain, and Maggie wants her son back from the villain. So we got this Marshall guy who enters the bar. That, you know, we go back and follow this new Marshall guy. He's another big new character that we're introduced to in this show, and he basically enters the bar that Maggie and Negan were both in, and he's looking for Negan. He's got the wanted poster that we saw a little bit earlier. He's looking for Negan, and he basically threatens the people of the bar, this one lady, and he threatens to kill her with some walkers against a fence and everything like that. We've seen that type of maneuver before, which is like threaten to kill people with walkers. He gets the information that he needs about, you know, where is Maggie, where is Negan, was this guy here at the bar? And ultimately, he still ends up just throwing her into the horde of walkers, letting her die, and moving on, because really he doesn't seem to really care. He just wants to find Negan. So this is like the Marshal of the New Babylon town or city that this guy's part of. There's like 3 little Marshal people that are kind of currently hunting down Negan. And I think Negan is just kind of a wanted man because they say he killed like a bunch of people that they know, some important people of their area. I don't know. I'm sure Negan's done quite a bit of stuff. It seems like we've been years since the end of The Walking Dead. It seems that way, at least. And I think Negan has done some things since then that may not have been too good. Makes sense for Negan. We cut back to Maggie and Negan, and they are now on their own. The kid, Ginny, has gone off with the Hilltop, and we cut to Maggie having a dream. And this is kind of like a little catch-up almost, if, you know, you're kind of jumping into this show after the main show and it's maybe been a little while for you. It's just like a little teaser, a little like a reminder, flashback to what Negan has done. We all know what Negan did. We all know how Negan took out Glenn and Abraham when he lined up our group with Rick. And it was like probably the turning point in the entire series, like the middle turning point of how the whole entire story shifted drastically. Some people didn't like it. I enjoyed it. It was kind of bumpy at some points, but I thought it was very interesting. That episode alone was like traumatizing, I guess you could say, in some ways. It was an incredibly emotional and just brutal episode, and we got a little flashback to that again, because obviously that is the big turning point. That is our introduction of these 2 characters, of Negan and Maggie, and that's kind of why they have just never liked each other, because Negan came in bashing in Glenn's head with a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. It's not going to sit well with her, and it still is just the big issue between these two, and it will never go away. It never will. Obviously the main show kind of wrapped up in a way their kind of issues. You know, they kind of came to an understanding in a way, not total like forgiveness or anything, but it was kind of an understanding. And now in this show, obviously if you're going to pair them up again, there's going to be some, you know, issues again. They're going to be bumping heads, and that's expected in this show. It really is. So I'm not really too worried about them bringing their conflicts back up again, even though they were kind of wrapped up, because if you're going to make this show, you're going to have these 2 characters. It makes sense to once again bring in this whole issue, and it's coming back to Maggie's mind because her son is missing, and she's, you know, worried because this is Glenn's son, and it's her son and it's Glenn's son, and she's now with the man who killed Glenn, her husband, because she needs his help to go get her son. It's just a big complicated situation for her. So basically, let's just cut to this. They end up kidnapping one of the 3 Marshals. It's like the young new kid Marshal that's kind of wandering off. She kidnaps them. She kidnaps that kid, and then her, Negan, and the kid all basically ride out on this boat off to Manhattan. So Manhattan is seemingly going to be the main place where a lot of this show takes place. It's obviously called Dead City. I don't know how long this show can really last, especially since it's called Dead City. I would assume we got to stay in the area at least. But we're off to Manhattan, so we're going to see Manhattan in the apocalypse. And this is where we really get the new vibe of a Walking Dead series. So even in the other shows, we've had like a bunch of, you know, walkers and people just running around in the woods and stuff like that. It's like, it gets very tiring. That's been one of my big complaints for a while, is The Walking Dead can get very cheap, and maybe their budget's just not as high as it was when it was at its peak on the main show, you know, the peak viewership. But they really just, they do a lot of woods episodes in the forest and just running around, and I'm really glad we're in an entirely new environment now, and we got to see how some of our big main characters here kind of navigate that, and I like that. So it's another whole vibe, and I really like that. You got Negan, Maggie, and this Marshall kid running around the city, basically trying to find this Croat guy. And there's like this fire that sparks every night and every morning, and they're running towards it to maybe see if maybe that's where they are. There's a big fire floating up from the sky from some sort of camp or whatever, and they're just gonna run towards it, I guess, because that's where they think he is. So, obviously, if you're going to run into the city, you're going to run into a big horde of walkers. So, they end up running into a big horde of walkers, running around a little bit. There's walkers falling from the tops of buildings because they're running right off the building. It's kind of silly. There's some really silly things they do with walkers in these shows, but at this point, whatever. They're dead animated walkers. You kind of just have to suspend reality a little bit. Just enjoy it a little bit, make it fun. I get it, but you got walkers falling from the tops of buildings, hitting cars, and they're just doing their crazy thing with walkers as they do. So Negan, Maggie, and this Marshall kid, they all get kind of stuck into a building. The main Marshall guy, and some other guy that he's with, the other guy that he's with, he confronts Negan and Maggie in the building, and it's kind of like a showdown a little bit. He kills the kid. He seems like very uncaringly just kills that kid that Negan and Maggie took. And I don't know if he intended to shoot the kid or not, but he was like right there with Negan. So Negan and Maggie, they escape, and she almost has a chance to kill this Marshall guy, but then, it ends up, they kind of get into a little scuffle, and it ends up looking like she's about to bash him over the head with the gun as she takes from him. But then she looks at Negan, and she kind of probably gets that idea like, I'm about to do the same thing that Negan does to people, so I don't really want to do that. So that's kind of the idea I got from that. So I think he's alive. I think we see him in the preview for the next, the rest of the season, the Marshall guy. So we'll see him again, but the other two guys are dead. They're dead. So we're going to have this one Marshall guy. I don't know if he's connected with this Croat guy, though, because he kind of came over with them. So he's just kind of like this Marshall guy on the side hunting Negan. Meanwhile, we have them going to fight some other bad guy. So we got some conflicts in there. I think the Croat guy is a lot more interesting than the Marshall stuff. But we'll see where it goes. Negan and Maggie. Now, this is weird. I don't know what to think about this yet because we don't know what the hell it is. But they basically enter this dark room. They light a match. And there's like this freaky old lady there right at the end. That's the last scene we see of Negan and Maggie. She like blows out their match, and we'll see what happens there. But I don't know what this is about. Maybe it's going to lead them to some weird new community. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of people living in cracks and corners in the whole city itself, so I'm sure we'll see somebody. But right now, that's what we're left with, and a little weird. I think she was like seen crawling on top of one of the buildings too, watching them. So I guess we'll see where that goes. We have 5 episodes left, and they can't really dilly-dally too much. Not like a 16 episode main season of The Walking Dead. It's a little shorter this time, which might be a good thing. I don't know. But then we cut to a scene with Herschel, who is a new actor. And we're going to have an aged up Herschel, and which is why I assume we're a good few years now from the main show, or at least a year. So it's a new actor. He's aged up. He's older now, but he's taken capture by this Croat guy. Here he is. So we see him in the trailer, and I find him incredibly interesting, actually. I think it's very cool that we have this villain out here that he's not too far from Negan, and he used to, I guess, work for Negan, I guess. And I would assume he was a savior. I guess when we learn that. I don't know if the saviors were formed yet. I don't know when this guy was with Negan in particular. But he was like with Negan out in the apocalypse. And I'm sure we'll get a lot more of that relationship as well uncovered. But I think it's really interesting. I like that they're connecting him with Negan. So it implicates Negan. So we get this. It makes sense now that Negan's there and Maggie's looking for her son. I like that it's kind of making sense a little bit. Like, I get it. I get why these two are paired together now. They made sense. Then we get to this final scene in the end. He has to get taken away. Interrogates Herschel a little bit. He just talks to him. It's basically like an introduction to him and seeing Herschel again. We cut away because one of his guards said that the guy ran away. So he ran away. Who is this guy? We don't know. I don't think it really matters. There's this guy at the end who is basically being tortured by them, and he runs away. He tries to slide down the zip line, and he just cuts the line and lets the guy fall all the way off the building. So I don't know the significance of this. I guess it just shows his brutality. We've seen a lot of brutal villains. It is what it is, but I guess we kind of get to see how this guy operates. I don't know. It's interesting. I think the guy has an interesting presence. There's not much to him that we know yet besides his connection with Negan, but I think his presence alone is very... I like it. I do like it. I like it amongst other villains in The Walking Dead, and especially some of the spin-offs. I think he's got a good vibe to him. I think he's very interesting. And I think they can do quite a bit with him, especially with the connections he has. So we'll see what kind of, I guess, rule he has over Manhattan. I don't know if he's like a kind of like a ruler over Manhattan or something. I don't know. But he is definitely a guy in charge. And Negan and Maggie are after him. He has Herschel, and that's where we're left off. So, The Walking Dead, Dead City. That was my quick rundown, like breakdown, I guess, of the episode itself. And I gotta say, it was very, very intriguing. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the next episode. And I mentioned before, there has been some Walking Dead spin-offs already. We've had that Tales of the Walking Dead too. Terrible show. Don't watch it. I did not like that one. Fear the Walking Dead is another one. That was the first spin-off they had. And it started off really well. I think the first 3 seasons were pretty good. It was okay. And then they jumped off and sent Morgan over there. And they did a bunch of weird stuff. And that show it's another whole story. It's gotten really strange. And then The World Beyond, they tried to introduce that group that Rick went off to. And all the spin-offs, I haven't liked them. I really have not liked them. I liked Fear for a little bit. But, Fear got really bad. I don't like Fear that much anymore. And the main show is the only thing that I think was consistently good for me all the way through. Even after Rick left, I think it was okay. And I think following our big main characters again in this show alone is promising. I think it's very promising. But you also have to introduce new characters, which we have. And we just have to see if these new characters are just as interesting and intriguing and can be just as great as our main stars. Because if not, then, what's the point? We're just going to have something like Morgan running around with his stick and Fear, and it's not really, that awesome. It even damages the character of Morgan to me in a way, just what they've done with him in that show. So just having a main character in, from the main show in a spin-off isn't enough. It gets you hooked. And I'm hooked with it. I do like the villain guy. I do think he's interesting. And the whole premise, the whole story makes sense so far to me. And I get why they're there. And there can be a lot done with this story. And 6 episodes, I don't think we're going to really filler it up too much. I think we're going to get pretty straight to the point of the story. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. But Dead City, The Walking Dead, Dead City. I don't know how big The Walking Dead is anymore, honestly. I know it's really big on Netflix, I think, but The Walking Dead is an interesting one for me. I kind of jumped into the main show halfway through, and I stuck with it ever since then. Watched it all. I love the show. I love the main show, and I know it's not as popular as it may have been once, like as the main show was at its peak. It was like 17 million viewers at its high. And I know it's not at that point anymore, but I still think The Walking Dead has a big following. I think it does. I could be wrong, but maybe it's because it's my algorithm and I see it all over my pages. But I still think there's a following to it. I don't know how big the zombie thing is anymore because you do have things like The Last of Us coming out too, and that show was pretty massive for HBO, and I didn't like it that much, but it was pretty big for HBO. And maybe The Walking Dead is still around picking up some viewers too. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I felt like covering this. I really like The Walking Dead stuff, at least the main show. and I'm curious to see where this Negan and Maggie story goes, because this has been my most anticipated thing since the main show ended. The other spin-offs have not really intrigued me, even. It just hasn't. So we'll see where it goes. Good first episode, and we'll see what happens next week.